How passionate do you have to be in business to make it long term? We're going to talk about it on the podcast today, especially if you're thinking about starting a entrepreneurial gig or quitting that job and starting a business and you're wondering, do I really got to be passionate about it? Do I got to really love what I'm doing? We're going to take an example from McDonald's and Burger King today and some stuff that's in the news as we talk about this topic. Hey, my name is Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning into the show today. This is the place where we talk about the things that actually work in business. No theory, no fluff, just the stuff that really works. Hey, before we dive in, we do have a quick ad from one of the businesses that sponsored today's show. Check this out, and we'll be back soon. Do you ever feel like your payment processor is robbing you blind? For some of us, it's not blind. We look at the amount of money that's going to our payment processor month after month, and a lot of times we ask ourselves, is there a better way? I'm making good money, yet so much of it isn't actually ending up in my pocket. In the world of payment processing, in many cases, it's a cashless world, so you have to have a payment processor you can really trust. I personally am a big fan of Brad Norwood, who's the owner of PrimePaymentsUSA.com. Brad's a business owner himself. He knows all the challenges that come with running a business. More importantly, he knows the value of an individual customer. See, some of these bigger businesses, they're all about scale. They're all about bringing in as many customers as possible. But do they know your name? Do they know your business? Do they know what's important to you? In many cases, the answer is no. And in worst cases, they're just looking to get as much money from every transaction that you work hard for, which really doesn't feel too good. So you got to reach out to Brad Norwood today and understand how he's doing business and why it can save you money month after month. More importantly, you might even ask him about his zero-fee payment processing that he's offering to a select few of people. Go to PrimePaymentsUSA.com and start putting the money that you worked hard for back into your pocket. So how passionate do you have to be? How passionate you got to be? I think this is an important question because I do from time to time, I think it is a bit romantic to assume that every person who quits their job and starts a business is truly doing something that is you're not always doing something that's fully inspirational. I talked to a guy, this was years ago, and he made candles, sold candles, and he was like, yeah, at the end of the day, it's a candle. It's not life-changing. It's a candle, and naturally you have some people who, take that kind of gig really seriously where it's like, no, it's not a candle. It's ambiance. It's an environment. It's an experience. But then you still have people who are like, it's a candle. And I've had that conversation with people many times over the years, different businesses, especially like trades-oriented businesses. It's like, hey, I'm putting wires together, and I'm an electrician. Hey, I'm fastening pipes. Like, this stuff isn't the most groundbreaking, aspirational stuff out there. But I do think this is interesting to talk about because when you think about making it long-term, you think about a business that can make it long-term, I fully believe there has to be some level of deep passion with what you do, even if the passion isn't exactly the product. So the reason we're talking about this today is McDonald's is in the news for a little bit of a marketing flub that happened. The CEO, they were announcing a new burger for this promotion for McDonald's. And someone had the idea of, hey, let's get our CEO introducing the burger and taking a big bite out of it. So what ends up happening is the CEO, who, I gotta tell you, some people were very unkind about this gentleman's appearance. There were some comments on, he looks like he's never had a burger in his life. One person said he looks like he's been 3D printed out of a lab. I'm not gonna make any comments about this guy's personal appearance. I think the guy looks very much buttoned up and, well polished, and I really don't have any comment on that, other than that. It wasn't just that social media disliked this video. I mean, they really got brutal about this. So ultimately, what happened though is this guy, the CEO, is introducing the burger, and he holds it up, and he's like, that smells amazing." And he takes a little tiny chipmunk nibble out of it and says, "Oh, wow, that's," and he doesn't say the product, he doesn't say the burger's really great. He goes, "Man, this is a great product. The product's really great." Something to that effect. And there's also like a screen grab that is circulating of the moment he takes the bite, which just doesn't look like he's really enjoying it. It looks like he is kind of forcing his way. It kind of reminds me of, we tried a new meal for our kids the other day. My kids are very young, and we always tell the kids, we say, "Hey, you got to try it. You got to at least try." We want them to try new foods. We don't want them to eat. I think if it was up to my kids, they would eat a slice of bread every night and every meal. In fact, they love their carbs. So we have a rule that, hey, whatever we make, you got to try it. And I think for whatever reason, those of you who are parents, maybe you understand this. Like, you start to fight a battle that you don't know why you're fighting it. But we had this meal the other night where we were like, "Hey, we're gonna have 3 bites," because they both my kids like took a lick of it, and they were like, "Bleh," and I said, "You're gonna take 3 bites." Well, my son, this poor guy, he takes this little tiny bite. He's just trying to force this thing down. I mean, his face is twisting, and he is, really. I mean, he's really trying. He's really trying. There was some similarity with that and this McDonald's CEO who, again, took this little nibble out of this burger. And, social media really got after this guy. They were like, "Man, how can you be the CEO of a burger joint and not love the food? How can you run a company and not like what you sell?" And I think some of these things are just really fair criticisms. Burger King, by the way, responded brilliantly. I think they did and by the way, the McDonald's one was a very professionally done video. He's in front of a 4K camera. He's sitting in a room. He has it in front of him, the meal in front of him. The Burger King CEO, he's wearing an apron. He's in a kitchen. He's in a Burger King kitchen. All of the food is there being made. Just the environment is totally different. So they got that right from the get go. And then the Burger King, which I think there's like a new Whopper or something. The Burger King, sorry, Whopper is Whopper. Which was Whopper? Is Whopper McDonald's or Burger King? Big Mac. No. That's McDonald's. We're good. It was the Whopper. Sorry, you could tell I eat burgers at these places really often. So I think there's like a new version of the Whopper or something. Well, he picks up this really big burger, takes a monstrous bite out of it. He's got mayo on his cheek. I mean, he's smiling. He's like, that is so good. And, he's talking to the staff. He's not talking to the camera. He's just talking to the staff. So they put this out, and I thought it was just a brilliant response from a marketing perspective. But you get kind of two worlds there. You get one person who seems to be not too interested in business, and the other person who, is trying to appeal to the customer and the burger enjoyer. And, who's to say what other burger companies will join in on the fun. But I've been thinking about this and thinking about this video and thinking about, ultimately, did the McDonald's CEO do anything wrong? And I don't necessarily think so, but I think there is something to be learned there as business owners, as people who sell things. And which, by the way, like, there's been some criticism too. I mentioned it earlier about how, the Burger King CEO says, "Oh, this is a great burger." Meanwhile, the McDonald's CEO says, "This is a great product," of like, "Oh, he's so disconnected. He calls them products." And I think just getting above the table for a second, understand that a lot of these large corporations are run by people who are very good at very specific things, who have experience in very specific industries. And, they're not like you or me. They didn't quit a job to start a business. There's a good chance. I don't know anything about any of these people's history, by the way, but there's a really good chance that the McDonald's CEO did not leave a CEO position at another company because he adores McDonald's. there's a good chance that anytime a a executive leaves one business and goes to another business, it's not because they are just deeply passionate about that other business. And I have many friends who have left Walmart and gone to Amazon or have gone to, other similar kinds of businesses. And let me tell you, it's not like a job interview. Now they may say it in a job interview, but it's not, oh, I was at Walmart, but I really always wanted to be at Amazon. No, it's because they have experience in retail or supply chain or, products, CPG, what have you. And here is a similar position that might even be promotion, what have you, at another company. So let's not be, I guess, too idealistic about this and just understand how this works. So I don't really necessarily hold anything against the McDonald's CEO for calling it a product. Again, he's not the first person who's taken a job. And again, I don't know this guy. I don't know him at all. So I shouldn't even imply that he did this for this reason. But I wouldn't be surprised if went from one CEO position to another one in the food industry. Probably had a big promotion, associated with it, a big pay increase, some great visibility. It's a great career move. I get it. And I just don't really necessarily hold it against him for calling it a product. But I do think this is something worthy for us to think about because, when you're in business, you're I mean, it's pretty rare that I come across people who are serial entrepreneurs who are just firing off, dozens of business ideas and just seeing what sticks. And I also can't really assume why someone got into business. It could be any number of reasons. They were sick of the corporate world. They wanted their own hours. They wanted more time with family, less travel. I mean, there could be any number of reasons, but I think regardless of whatever that reason is, there has to be passion in your business. There has to be passion in your work. I have run Good Advice for over 7 years now. I've been in the business world for over a decade now. It is understating it to say that there have been many low points and many times that I have been uninspired or disinterested or beat down or depressed or discouraged, hopeless. I mean, there are so many emotions that you experience when you run a business. That's not, by the way, to I don't want any of this to sound like overly negative. It's just, in 7 years of running a business, you go through the full gambit. I was just literally talking to a gentleman yesterday who had a deal that was closed, and then the deal didn't happen. It didn't happen last minute, and he was frustrated about it. And it was like, man, what can I do next time to seal that deal? And we talked through a couple of ideas, but then I ultimately said, you know what? This was not for you. This was the first time maybe this has happened, but it will not be the last. There will be many more times that you have a surefire deal that evaporates at the last minute. I mean, I can easily think of 3 or 4 off the top of my head. I mean, I had a massive deal that was it's funny. I tell myself we don't celebrate till the contract is signed, but I had a massive deal, 30K plus, huge deal. And over again, the decision maker was like, "Yep, this is for sure happening. It's for sure happening." Things got a little delayed, and he's like, "No, no, no, it's for sure happening." And it didn't happen. The deal didn't happen. It's even the most surefire things sometimes have a tendency to just, you know, disappear overnight, I guess. So pointing this out, you're just going to experience so many different feelings when you run a business. Um, I already mentioned deals that evaporate. Suddenly you have a month where the expenses were so much bigger than the money you made, and you look at your cash flow and you're like, "What happened?" Or, you have a couple of months of poor sales, and you look at your revenue over a quarter and you compare it to like the previous quarter or the quarter before, and you're like, "What happened? Like, what's going on?" I had a guy I was talking to who he had a bad quarter, and he thought, "Man, I hope, does this mean that my I need to close up shop?" Like, he was literally, and he had been in this industry for over a decade. He's in the auto industry, but he had been in the auto industry for over a decade and was like, I feel like this is like a sign of the times. I feel like there's nothing I can do." So, like, he's having an existential crisis about his business and how it fits and how it, works with things. And I've told the story before, but I talked to another business owner. This was, a few years back, probably 4 or 5 years back. And he did, his business was essentially international calls. Way oversimplifying it, but essentially overnight calls. Well, then you had something called WhatsApp that got bought by Facebook, and his business disappeared overnight. I had a friend of mine who ran a travel business. I had another friend of mine who ran a employee travel experience kind of business, like employee incentives. One of them talked about losing, I think it was like 90K, 100K when COVID hit. I mean, when COVID hit, I had a handful of really huge corporate accounts that had all disappeared within a quarter. So, when you run a business, you're going to experience many setbacks. And I can't really speak to like how someone feels like in a corporate, as like a corporate CEO. I don't know how that feels when you're looking at like stock price or things like that. I really don't know. I have no experience there. I wouldn't know the first thing about that, how that feels. But I do know, for as a small business owner, though, you're wrestling with these things often. So my message today is understanding, man, you got to have passion with it. There's got to be something you're passionate about with what you're with what you're doing. And it really doesn't have to be the product. And in fact, and I've had this conversation in the past. I talked to a guy who had two business ideas. One of them he was really, really passionate about, but didn't think he could make much money on it. And then he had this other thing that was based on like a prior career that he thought he could make a lot of money with, but he didn't care about it at all because he had done it for like 20, 30 years. And he said, "Which one should I do?" And at the time I said, you should do the one that's going to make you money. And, it's a surefire thing. You know how to do it. I think you're going to be appreciating the cash flow. And I don't know if I would necessarily change my answer, but I think I probably would have, in hindsight, said, hey, I would do the surefire thing and use that to fund the passion, or find something in between. Is there a way you can do this and find passion in what you're doing? And for me, for example, those who've known me, I was a teacher over a decade ago. And sometimes people have asked me, what did you think about teaching? What was it like teaching high school? What did you teach? Yada, yada, yada. And, funny enough, I never really, this probably makes me sound like a bad teacher. I never really cared much about what I taught. I mean, I wanted, I wanted my kids to learn. I wanted them to, pass their tests. I wanted them to graduate. I wanted them to, be educated. And I appreciated that responsibility. But at the end of the day, did I really care if a kid knew how to balance equations 20 years down the road? No, I really didn't. So I really didn't have much passion around the content. But what I was passionate about were these young people who, many of them didn't have a parental figure in their life. Many of them didn't have someone who was telling them they could do it, that they could make something of themselves, that they could accomplish important things in their life. And I took that personal. Now, I don't know if I made much of an impact or made much of a difference for those people, but I can tell you I was very passionate about it. I daily was very passionate about it. So, for your business, you may not be very passionate about the product, but then you have to ask yourself, like, where does the passion lie? Like for me, like I there's elements of good advice. I mean, there's the consulting side of it, and then there's like this marketing side of it, and like the podcast and SEO and all this other stuff that's, the business has evolved over the years. A lot of the stuff I don't really personally care about in the sense of I'm not passionate about it. What I'm passionate about is helping people. I genuinely enjoy the feeling knowing that I've helped someone, that I've helped some business, that I've advanced their business. The expression that was taught to me when I was young was hold the ladder for other people to climb up. That's been a personal motto of mine for a very long time. It's been a core part of who I am. So when someone says, dude, our business has exploded in growth, it's going amazing, this is incredible. When a business looks at the marketing data and they say, wow, this is really good. Or, we were doing a podcast and the podcast person sent over a note that said, hey, that episode got us more downloads than we've ever had before. Like stuff like that feels good, not because I care that much about the individual item or the thing we did for them. I just like knowing that I helped. That's just something that has always been a motivator for me. So for your business, it may not be the product. It could be the product. I mean, if you love, you sell hats and you love hats. I mean, you sleep with the hat on. I'm like, dude, more power to you. That's great. I love that. But if it's not the product, there's got to be something. And there's got to be something that I haven't fully thought this through. I feel like it has to be external in a way. Like it can't just be self-gratifying and self-fulfilling. And, I'm passionate about making as much money as possible so that I can live a luxurious life. Like if that's your why, the Simon Sinek, find your why. If that's your why, I don't know how fulfilling that will really be for you. And I also don't want to be like overly philosophical where it's like, how noble is your passion or how virtuous is it? I'll just say, if you have a meaningful passion, there's meaning behind it, there's impact, there's influence behind it. That will be your life raft when you go through the storms. That will be the thing that you cling to when business, and not even when you have a huge setback, but when you're just in a season. I think sometimes people think that, running a business that it's always fires, and sometimes it is. In a way, it kind of is, I guess. I think you learn to deal with the fires where they're not really that big of a deal. But you will have seasons where you just aren't feeling it. And then you'll have seasons that you're so zealous and excited and like, let's go. But I have felt the full gambit in 7+ years. So my question to you is, what is your passion? What is the thing that drives you? What is the thing that keeps you showing up day after day? When you blow it, when you screw it up, when a customer's pissed at you, when a team member, I had a team member that I onboarded and she quit on day one. She literally, we did all this stuff, like got her assigned all these projects, had put all this work. This lady was awesome. I was really excited about her and she seemed really excited. And I think in hindsight, I think she got another job offer that came through at like the last minute. So I don't fault her for that. I don't hold it against her. But I'm very excited about this person coming on. And literally day one, I'm sorry, I can't actually take this job. So you're gonna take your swings. You're gonna take your licks, and you have to have something to fall back on. What is that thing for you? Hey, thanks for listening to today's podcast episode. I so appreciate you tuning into the Good Advice podcast. And if you're a first-time listener, what are you waiting on? Click that subscribe or follow button so you can keep getting good advice. Don't forget, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice, where you can support the podcast for as little as the price of a cup of coffee, which is $5 a month, by the way. These days, a cup of coffee can be $5, $6, $7. It's $5 a month. So anyway, I appreciate those of you who support the podcast. That's today's good advice, and we'll see you later.